Racism in football has been a persistent and deeply troubling issue for decades. Despite numerous campaigns, initiatives, and promises of zero tolerance, discriminatory incidents continue to mar matches, tarnish players' careers, and divide fan communities. As we kick off 2024, the football world finds itself at a critical juncture. The fight against racism has gained momentum, yet for every step forward, there seems to be two steps back. High-profile incidents continue to make headlines, while countless others go unreported or unaddressed. In this video, we'll explore the racism in football and its impacts. The roots of this issue run as deep as the sport itself, intertwining with broader societal prejudices and colonial legacies. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as football began to professionalize and grow in popularity, it reflected the racial attitudes of the time. In Britain, one of the earliest documented black players was Andrew Watson, who captained Scotland in 1881. While celebrated for his skills, Watson and other pioneering players of color faced significant prejudice both on and off the pitch. As we moved into the mid-20th century, the ugly face of racism became more visible. The 1970s and 1980s saw a surge in overt racist behavior in stadiums across Europe. Black players were subjected to monkey chants, banana throwing, and vicious verbal abuse. Icons like Viv Anderson, England's first black international player, and John Barnes faced horrific treatment from fans, sometimes even from their own supporters. Let's consider John Barnes' words as he reflects on his experiences. When I played for Liverpool, I was the only black player in the squad. Every away game, I knew what to expect. The monkey chants, the bananas, it was a weekly occurrence. This period also saw the rise of far-right groups using football as a recruitment ground, further poisoning the atmosphere in and around stadiums. The 1990s marked a turning point with the launch of campaigns like Let's Kick Racism Out of Football in England. These initiatives began to raise awareness and push for change, but progress was slow and often met with resistance. As we entered the new millennium, football authorities started to take more concrete steps. FIFA introduced anti-racism measures, including the possibility of point deductions for clubs whose fans engaged in racist behavior. UEFA followed suit with its No to Racism campaign. Yet, despite these efforts, racism persisted. The advent of social media in the 2000s and 2010s opened up new avenues for abuse, allowing anonymous trolls to target players directly. High-profile incidents continued to make headlines, demonstrating that while progress had been made, the battle was far from won. Despite strict regulations and hefty fines, racist incidents between players still occur. In 2011, Liverpool's Luis Suarez was banned for 8 matches for racially abusing Manchester United's Patrice Evra. More recently, in 2019, allegations of racism marred an England-Bulgaria match, with the game being stopped twice due to racist chants from Bulgarian fans. These high-profile cases are just the tip of the iceberg. Many players report experiencing racism from opponents, often in the form of subtle comments or gestures that go unnoticed by officials. While overt racist chanting has decreased in many countries, it hasn't been eliminated. In 2019, Italian striker Mario Balotelli threatened to walk off the pitch after suffering racist abuse from opposition fans. In Eastern Europe, black players are still sometimes greeted with monkey chants or Nazi salutes. Even in leagues considered more progressive, racism persists. In 2018, Manchester City's Raheem Sterling was allegedly subjected to racist abuse from Chelsea fans. Sterling later spoke out, saying, "I just had to say something about it. I don't want the next generation of black players to have put up with this evil." Perhaps the most significant shift in modern racism is its migration to the digital realm. Social media platforms have become breeding grounds for racist abuse, with players subjected to a barrage of hateful messages after matches. In 2021, a study by the Professional Footballers Association found that 44% of Premier League players received racist abuse on Twitter. Players like Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, and Jadon Sancho faced a torrent of racist messages after missing penalties in the Euro 2020 final. The anonymity provided by these platforms has emboldened racists, making online abuse one of the most pressing issues in modern football. It's crucial to recognize that racism in football doesn't exist in isolation. It often intersects with other forms of discrimination, such as genders and homophobia. Women's football, for instance, faces its own set of battles with racism, often compounded by gender discrimination. Moreover, the rise of Islamophobia has led to increased targeting of Muslim players. In 2021, French player Paul Pogba was subjected to Islamophobic abuse after a match, highlighting how religious discrimination intertwines with racial abuse. While much of the focus on racism in football centers in Europe, it's a global issue. The effects of racism in football extend far beyond the 90 minutes on the pitch. For players who face discrimination, the impact can be profound, long-lasting, and multifaceted. Perhaps the most significant impact of racism is on players' mental health and emotional well-being. Constant exposure to racial abuse can lead to anxiety and depression, with many players reporting feelings anxious before matches, knowing they might face racist abuse. This anxiety can develop into depression over time. The added stress of dealing with racism on top of the normal pressures of professional sports can lead to burnout. Continuous racial abuse can chip away at a player's self-worth, affecting their confidence both on and off the pitch. Players who speak out about racism often face backlash, leading to feelings of isolation within their teams or the broader football community. Raheem Sterling, who has been vocal about his experiences with racism, once said, "It's not just about me, it's about every young black kid who has a dream of playing football. We shouldn't have to warn them about the abuse they may face." This quote underscores the far-reaching impact of racism, affecting not just current players but potentially discouraging future generations from pursuing the sport. The stress and anxiety caused by racial abuse can affect a player's concentration and performance during matches. Racial stereotypes and biases can limit players' opportunities, particularly in certain positions. For instance, black players have historically been underrepresented in central midfield roles, often stereotyped as purely physical players. The lack of diversity in coaching and management positions can discourage players from pursuing these careers post-retirement. There have even been instances where racial bias has affected contract negotiations and transfer deals. Former England international John Barnes noted, "When I was playing, I knew I had to be twice as good as a white player to get the same recognition. Sadly, I'm not sure how much that's changed." The sentiment reflects the additional pressure and barriers that players from minority backgrounds often face in their professional careers. The impact of racism extends beyond the player to their families and personal lives. Players' families often suffering alongside them, experiencing anxiety and distress when watching matches or engaging with social media. High-profile players who speak out against racism often face intense public scrutiny and backlash, affecting their personal lives. Young players in particular may struggle with their identity and sense of belonging when faced with persistent racism. Marcus Rashford, who faced racist abuse after missing a penalty in the Euro 2020 final, spoke about the impact on his community. "I've grown into a sport where I expect to read things written about myself. Whether it be my skin color, where I grew up, or more recently, how I decide to spend my time off the pitch. I can take credit of my performance all day long, but I will never apologize for who I am and where I came from." Despite the persistent challenge of racism in football, the sport has not remained passive. Players, clubs, organizations, and fans are increasingly taking a stand and fighting back against discrimination. Players, often the direct victims of racist abuse, have been at the forefront of this fight. In 2021, English football clubs and players participated in a social media boycott to protest online abuse and pressure platforms to take stronger action. Many players have also established foundations or partnered with charities to combat racism. Marcus Rashford, for example, has been a powerful advocate for addressing racial disparities and child poverty. Football clubs and leagues have also stepped up their efforts. Many clubs now run anti-racism education programs for players, staff, and fans. Leagues have implemented harsher penalties for racist behavior, including point deductions and stadium bans. Improved systems for reporting racist incidents have been established, making it easier for fans and players to flag concerns. The Premier League's No Room for Racism campaign is an example of a league-wide initiative aiming to tackle discrimination through education, awareness, and improved reporting and sanctioning processes. Several organizations have been established specifically to combat racism in football. Show Racism the Red Card is an anti-racism educational charity that uses the high-profile status of football and football players to help tackle racism in society. The FAIR Network is an international organization that works to combat inequality in football and uses football as a social tool to reduce discrimination. While progress has been made, it's clear that the battle is far from over, and continued vigilance, innovation, and commitment from all stakeholders in the sport will be necessary to create a truly inclusive football community. What do you think is the most effective way to combat racism in football? Share your thoughts in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.